right. Good evening. I'd like to call the August 13th, 2025 Design Review Commission Work Session meeting to order. Christina, can you please call the roll?
Temple.
Here.
Marsh.
Here.
Aguilar. Erstad.
Here.
Johnson. Gesrick.
Here.
4 present, 2 absent.
In the work session? I guess that's a question. Do we need to mention the Johnson's last meeting? Okay. We have one item tonight on the work session. It's item number 1, DRH 24-00031, locations 3150 West Main Street. At this time, I'll turn it over to Caitlin for her report.
Great. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So this is a work session for DRH 24-00031 for the overall site improvements at 3150 West Main Street. The parcel is located northwest of the Main and Whitewater Park Boulevard intersection. As a refresher, this is a mixed-use project including 5 buildings, the CWI building, a multifamily building, a parking garage and retail building, a hotel, and a wellness spa. And then each building will have a separate design review application, and this is for the overall site improvements. The Design Review Commission initially heard this application at the March 13th, 2024 hearing and approved the project with a future work session. At the July 9, 2025 work session, the Design Review Commission deferred the project to allow the applicant to work on providing additional information and reduce the number of site-specific conditions. The applicant has submitted several additional items, including updated civil drawings with circulation improvements and the Whitewater Park RRFB crossing added to the plans. Updated landscape plans that include additional street trees between the internal sidewalks and the service drives to provide additional pedestrian and vehicle separation. Landscape construction plans, including preliminary planting plans and some outdoor finishes and furnishings. Bicycle parking exhibits, including bike calculations based on the building uses. An updated access easement exhibit, a preliminary bus stop design that has been updated but will need to be updated further to comply with all VRT and ACHD requirements. The streetscapes have been updated to comply with the Boise Streetscape Manual, and the applicant will continue to coordinate with ACHD and VRT in the city if any updates are required. A preliminary lighting plan and specifications were submitted, which the applicant will update to comply with the zoning code. And an updated solid waste exhibit was provided showing circulation paths to the solid waste area, and the applicant will coordinate with Public Works for final solid waste design approval. Based on the updated submittal information, the planning team has updated the recommended site-specific conditions. The applicant is in agreement with the 5 remaining site-specific conditions, which would replace the previous site-specific conditions. And the planning team recommends approval of the updates with the updated conditions, and we have a rather lengthy recommended motion if you decide to approve the project. And if there's no questions, we can have the applicant present their updates.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions for staff at the moment? Seeing none, thank you. Is the applicant present? Yeah. You would please state your name and address for the record.
There we go. There we go. Good evening. Thanks for having us. My name is Ryan Cutler. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Allquist Development, representing CWI this evening on this site. We're grateful to be here. My address is 1144 Silverstone Way in Meridian, Idaho, 83642. Appreciate Caitlin and your staff report and Josh and his team that always do a great job with putting these reports together and getting us the information we need. And we really appreciate the timely responses that we get back from staff, which is always helpful when we're working through projects like this. We know that we've been working on this project for a little bit, but it's been some great coordination back and forth with staff and this commission to help us kind of get it right and get it to a spot where it feels comfortable and good. We recognize that this location is going to be kind of a beacon or an extension of that downtown area, and it's really important that we get it right, especially as many are familiar with this site. Has been sitting vacant as a parking lot for a while, and I think everybody's very eager to see it be something different. We want to make sure that something different is something good for the city, something good for CWI and for the community. So thank you for hearing us again this evening. As Caitlin mentioned, we are in agreement with the conditions that they've placed in the staff report. One of the things that we discussed when we were here last month with this group this evening, this commission, back then on that night was there were just a lot of conditions. We were in agreement with the conditions that were on the staff report the last time, but there was a lot of them. And one of the items that was brought up by this commission was to work with staff to reduce the number of conditions that were in the staff report to kind of clean that up a little bit. I'm happy to announce that we have 5 tonight when we had 17 before. So we've worked hard with staff, and credit also to CWI and their team to be willing to work with us as we kind of maneuver a few things to make sure it's working, to be able to cut 12 conditions out of a staff report. That doesn't go unnoticed from the CWI team being willing to help in that situation. So we're grateful for them. I guess I can use this, make sure it's working. There we go. Sorry, I just mentioned that, but just some of the items that we do want to point out that were brought up in the last meeting that we wanted to bring to your attention that we've made some adjustments on. We have had discussions back and forth in multiple coordination efforts with ACHD. Ultimately, we have shown that RRFB added to the crosswalk at an intersection at Whitewater Park Boulevard. On the record, ACHD said it's not warranted. However, in discussion with this group last time we did this, it was very specific that they wanted to say, ACHD needed to say that it was prohibited that we have it there. And so in coordination with them, we've added that to the plans. Some of the landscape items, number 2, there was a request, Commissioner Semple, you had made some requests to make some adjustments to some of the plants and different things there. As you can see, A, B, and C, we've made adjustments to that with the tables on the plan. Some of these things I won't read all the way through. You can see them, just some details on that like Caitlin mentioned, hardscape materials, furnishings, direct path from CWI to the plaza. We've made adjustments with staff to make sure that meets their criteria from a setback standpoint, from a separation of a buffer area standpoint, and then also making sure that any there were some trees that were required in a parking area, that they were set in the right location. That is item number 6 listed in this list here. Again, I won't bore you with all of these, but these are just trying to show you in the efforts to work with staff some of the items that we have changed. Coordinated with staff on making sure there was enough long-term and short-term biking, not only throughout the site, but there will be some additional short-term and long-term bike parking that will be within the parking garage. That is a future building, future DR hearing that will be happening actually on the 10th. Next meeting. It will be on the 10th of September. That has been accepted by staff, and we'll be here talking about that parking garage on the next meeting. We do have approval already through for the CWI tower building itself. It does have some of these short-term bike parking facilities around the building as well, but included with this overall site plan, we have met the requirements for long-term and short-term bike parking. As mentioned by Caitlin, we did meet with Public Works Solid Waste staff to get their sign off on our locations and sizing of all the units that we're using there. And we will continue to work with them as we get closer to the actual construction of the site. We've had coordination back and forth with VRT to make sure that the bus stop area out along Main Street has met their standards as far as meeting the standards for their bus, the size of pad, the actual bus stop itself, and then coordinating with that, the bike lane and the sidewalk and the buffer area behind it in coordination with ACHD. That will be an ongoing discussion as we continue to work with them as this gets approved, just how we work in that roadway to make sure it's satisfactory to them. And we're happy with the condition that's been placed in the staff report. And then just the streetscapes have been updated to match what is needed by the city. There was a request near our multifamily building, which is another building that you will see on September 10th. It's also coming on that same night. Sorry, you got to see me again a couple times, but on September 10th, making sure there was an ADA parking and loading spot added there. That has been added to the site plan and satisfactory to staff. And then just making sure we match the correct fixtures that were needed for lighting in the site. And we've done that. We're grateful for staff and their efforts. We get it. We're developers. It's not always easy to work with us. We can be pushy sometimes, and we're trying to balance, obviously, the client that we're working with and making sure they're being satisfied in their needs from a financial standpoint, and then also working with this group and staff to make sure that we're meeting the requirements and the needs of the city to make sure everybody comes out a winner on this site. And it's been a really, actually, a really rewarding process to go through with this. I mean, I grew up in Boise. I've known this site only as a parking lot since I was a little kid. So to be able to come in and work on a site like this is really rewarding and really a cool thing to be a part of. Not only just to see the site go up and the different development that's going there, but also to be a part of the CWI that has such a great and is going to have a great impact on the city of the Boise and the Valley from now until for a long, long time, and helping people have the opportunity to receive education closer to where they live. That's something that's really, really great. And it will change positively this area that we know is going to grow and change over time. So we're really grateful for that. Again, thankful for staff, thankful for your opportunity to come in and chat with you guys about this again. We agree with the approval recommendation on the staff report, and I would stand for any questions if you have any. And also, if needed, from a technical standpoint, we do have our engineer, Michael O'Reilly from Kimley Horn here. If you had any questions from a technical standpoint, that he could also stand up and answer those questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions from the commission for applicant at this time? Well, great, thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
Is there anybody, members of the public are looking to testify to this item, or neighborhood association? Any online, Josh, at all? Hearing none. I take it the applicant doesn't have any rebuttal to that. Okay. Any final questions? Okay, close this public portion, bring it back to the commission for discussion, motion, and go from there. So at this time, open for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Stat.
wondering if Caitlin could pull up a presentation I sent over to her. Before we move on from this project and this master plan, I think it's really important that we draw attention to what was initially shown to the public 2.5 years ago when this team won an RFQ to redevelop the site. I think that it's what was shown and what was submitted as a winning application is a really interesting and dynamic use of this site. It's done a lot of really interesting things. And Caitlin, if you can move to the next slide. And one more. And one more. As mentioned, you know, at the time in the press release, they were interacting with the river in a big way. They really paid close attention to the fact that the city's maturing, and they wanted to bring the green belt into the urban fabric. And you know, there's some excellent diagrammatic work showing the way that all these buildings would interact with each other, with the site, with the natural environment. And Caitlin, next slide. What we get now is this, and we're being asked to approve the the details, the public way, the way that this master plan interacts with landscaping and with site circulation, and what we've seen is something that is, you know, a dramatic departure from what was originally shown to the city and the state and the people that are going to live around it. If you could move one more, Caitlin. This is what had been proposed as, you know, another essentially a park space, a large plaza, a very dynamic, an interactive space that would, you know, as they say, pull the public realm into the private realm and let them mingle and create a true campus. But what we've got is, next slide, this, which is, you know, a couple of suburban style podium apartments that we get to see next month, and a very large parking garage with nothing on top of or around it, a single story retail against a pretty mundane street, and a suburban style motel. I just need all of this to be out and acknowledged as we move forward, because this is a generational opportunity in terms of 10 acres on the river with an educational component. And what we are being shown is just not a generational project. I know that we don't ever want to let perfect be the enemy of good here, but as a comparative exercise, I would not say that this is even good. And I think that we as a city will regret allowing this to move forward in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, 8 decades, that these will all be standing here. So for all of those reasons, I am going to motion a denial of this project. I don't think that the streetscapes, the right-of-ways, or the landscaping measure up to what was initially proposed. And I don't think that there's any treatment of them that could redeem them to a point where this would be acceptable in my eyes.
Mr. Stead, other thoughts, comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it's just simple.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Commissioner Erstad's coming from, just from a optics standpoint, just from what, you know, one project versus, you know, the end result. I think that there's been a lot of things that have happened though, in terms of how this project evolved. I know that initially there was a lot of neighborhood and public pushback on the initial design with the heights of the buildings. I know that the West End neighborhood specifically had provided a lot of comments about those heights. I know that that's neither here nor there in terms of the design of what we saw then and what we see now, and what would have been able to be approved by the city code. I do think that the applicant has adjusted their plan based on that community, you know, input, which inherently led to a little bit more of a spread out of the development of the site. I'm not sure. I know that the site plan talks about future retail, and in this we do see like a fairly large green space. So I'm not sure if staff has any input on what that.
Well, the site plan calls that out as a future building pad.
Right, it says future retail. I'm just curious what, you know, what in the future. I mean, right now I'm looking at something that looks like it's a park right there. And so if there was, I don't know, maybe staff has a little bit more information about what that looks like long term.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think we've seen different wording on different plans, so it might be worth, if you're curious about that spot, opening it back up to the public to ask the applicant.
I think, Mr. Chair, I would like to do that because I'd like to get a little bit of feedback based on just this conversation.
Is there a consensus on the commission to open this up back to the public? All those in
Yes.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
let's go ahead and open up the public portion of it again, and if the applicant could come forward and provide some insight on.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Ryan Cutler, Hawkwest Development. All good comments. I don't know if I can, well, I'll start with this. I mean, we've been working on this project for a long time. Does it look different than what it did originally? It does. I will point out, I guess, in this discussion that we're having tonight, before I answer your questions, the site's already been approved. We're just here talking about conditions of approval. Not that I'm trying to, I can agree with some of the things that Commissioner Erstad says, that does this look different than it really originally did? It does. To your point, Commissioner Semple, we did receive feedback from the community, and they came back to us and said that our buildings were too tall, and they didn't like this and they didn't like this. So we had to do some adjustment on our part to try to react to what the community wanted. That's why you don't see an 8-story CWI building now. It's a 4-story building with an additional lot. The green space that is there now that will eventually could be a building pad is intended to be an additional CWI building. It could have some retail component to it. The retail component now is at the front portion of the parking garage. I don't know if this points, anyways, where the future retail and parking garage. So the very front half of that building is all retail, a retail component that's intended to draw people from CWI, from the surrounding neighborhood, and from the green belt. That's why it was so important to work with staff on making sure that we had the area opened up to make sure it flowed properly by us for circulation through the site. So what is intended to happen there is that green space that we don't intend, in talking to CWI, I think that is a ways out from them ever, or potentially could not ever be a building there, depending on how things go with their 4-story building and classes and things there. That could be an open space park for a considerable amount of time. That's why it's being left as is instead of something else being constructed there. And so that is the plan for that building. But just, you're right, there still is great opportunity for us with our users along the river for us to open up the river and to work with those items. Those things are still a work in progress. Staff knows, and I've talked with other members of staff, that we've discussed options of opening up the river to the west of the Greenbelt, actually down into the river, and what our options might be there as a portion of what we're trying to do along the Greenbelt. For now, and in this meeting that we're having tonight, again, this site has been approved already. We're just trying to make sure that our conditions are, the city's conditions are met. We're working with this DR commission to make sure they're comfortable with what we've presented as far as eliminating some of those conditions that staff had placed on it. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that. And again, receiving that feedback last time and coming back and working with staff to make that happen. So I agree. Does it look exactly like it was presented before? It doesn't. That was a portion of feedback coming back from members of the community, and adjusting those sites based on their feedback, and then working through with city staff and this DR commission to make sure we met those conditions.
Questions from the commission for the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Stead.
I struggle taking the community feedback at face value when the residential that's proposed there is at least 6, probably 7 stories, relative to an 8-story building that's not much of a departure, and closer to the residential as well. So I appreciate that community feedback has been integrated. I don't completely buy it.
Okay.
I think that discussing the right-of-way was a major portion of what this whole work session was called for, and the idea of interacting with the river, that's exactly the kind of thing that we would like to be discussing right now. And the way that the Greenbelt interacts with your site and also with the river, that was the whole point, was to talk about the design elements that go into the master plan itself and all the pseudo quasi-public components of the master plan. So excited to hear about that. I'd love to know more about that. But it still feels like there are public area components of this that could be improved upon. That plaza space that sits between the CWI building and the future residential and retail is an excellent opportunity to have, living street style of public area between, like, running down the axial east-west of this site. And instead it's going to be blocked by a low-rise retail. And I think that while that is a nice green space there, it's not a truly deeded park, and it's also right up against Main Street as people are revving their engines to hit the interstate. So it's not exactly the best public space either. If we're really serious about that being a nice public space, then it would be internal to the site, and there'd be another building there sheltering that from the street noise.
Maybe just in response, I really don't have a response to those questions from what we presented, but just in response to that, we have submitted a 4-story multi-family building there. It's in with staff right now, so it is 4 stories.
Other, simple.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you, the plaza here at the corner next to that green space, it does look like it's incorporating some pedestrian level, activation, integration there. I appreciate that it's not as large of a space against there. I also think that there's, inherently some changes that are going to be, and some moves that are made based on the feedback that they've received over the years. I appreciate the comments that Commissioner Erstad's made. It's different. But I also do agree that I do think that this whole site has been, redesigned, and they've gone back and addressed a lot of what we've talked to them about in the past and what we've requested from them. And it sounds like they've addressed the majority of them. I know that there's, kind of a overarching difference, but I don't see, I feel like you've addressed the conditions of approval that we asked you to come back and address. Maybe talk a little bit more about the programming for that corner and that space, and how that, kind of integrates a little more, draws people in there, would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of the things that we had to, in conjunction with our partner CWI, right, who is the main component of this site, working with them to determine future plans for them, because in the future there's an opportunity for them to build an additional site there if needed. That was part of the plan for this. So as we went through and discussed all of the items that potentially would be in a green space there, we had to be a little bit particular about what we placed in there, knowing that in the future there's potential that could go away if additional building was needed. So there was a lot of back and forth that went on there. We discussed lots of things: pickleball courts, volleyball courts, all sorts of different things there. And then in relation to the retail center there, how that would affect that, what it might draw from the Greenbelt, positive or negative, those types of things that we're talking about. And then in relation to the giant city park that sits directly to the north of this, the draw in this location is not going to be this small little park area here. It's going to be people that are in the park area to the north, utilizing this for what it is, as far as from an educational space to somewhere that they might live, that gives them access to the Greenbelt, that has some retail there with some open space to it that allows somebody to stay on site if they wanted to, and to do things there from a residential standpoint, from a schooling standpoint, from a future hotel standpoint. And then as we continue to work with the city on activating the river, as you're well aware, this is in the flood. This is in the flood zone here. And so anything that we do to the west of that Greenbelt area has some additional challenges with it based on a permitting standpoint. And so we've begun that discussion with them on what it might take to do some additional work there, but there is some time constraint there with permitting. In our discussions with the hotel across the street, there's been some discussions, I'm just throwing that out, there's been some discussions of a ped bridge crossing happening right there. And we've been entertaining those discussions with them. Those are very early on. But again, based on where this sits in the river, That's really not something that can happen overnight. The permitting, working with the Army Corps, doing all of those things to open up that river is something that we're interested in engaging, but it's something we have to do very carefully to make sure that it's not messed up. So to answer your question, we do feel like there's a sufficient area there of green space for what it is. Again, knowing that we are directly adjacent to a large city park that is going to draw most of the attention from an open space standpoint, we wanted to be able to provide area there for somebody that wants to go study in an open space or be out in between classes, somebody that wants to head out there from the multifamily area and just get some fresh air in a close proximity, knowing they also could go to the large city park that is directly adjacent to the site as well. So it was a mixture of between how do we make this work financially and for what's needed for the client and meet the standards of what the city is asking us to do. And I feel like the conditions that we've met are doing that.
And Mr. Chair, just a real quick follow-up. On the north side of the future hotel, kind of at that northwest corner, I know that that's kind of the newest part of Esther Simplot Park right in there, that developed area. Is that pretty much open kind of? I mean, I know there's some fencing in there now, which obviously chain link's going to go away, but just wondering about how open that is, that interface, or if it's real porous or if it's.
Could we put that map go back up just to make sure that
Yeah,
we're
it's up here, but
I didn't see it. I see
yeah.
myself in here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, early on in the discussion, full disclosure, early on in the discussion, there was a cul-de-sac that ran back to that corner. And we went back and forth, talked with fire, talked with the city, and the initial discussion was we'd like to see some connectivity for that park. And we had drawn in a roadway with a cul-de-sac. It wasn't ideal, but it was in efforts to try to make that coordination happen with the city. Ultimately, in discussion with the city, it was preferred that it wasn't there and that we did just leave an opening there as from a pedestrian standpoint, because we have the walkway that goes along the entire north side of this property so that somebody could get from Whitewater Park Boulevard on the back side of the site all the way to the park. Somebody could come through the site and get to the Greenbelt and get to the park. Somebody could come along. Any portion of this site has connectivity to an area that connects them to that park. And that was something that we wanted to highlight there. The concern was with that cul-de-sac that was going back in the corner, that it became a drop-off spot over and over and over for people trying to get to that site. And ultimately the decision was, in conjunction with the city, that we would remove that and then just make sure that we had connectivity pedestrian-wise to get out to the site. So to answer your question, there is opening through that fence to get all the way through into that park site.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments for the applicant prior to?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
What's planned for in the area of the future hotel? There's currently shown kind of just like a gray hardscaped area. What's planned for that space?
Yeah. Mr. President, Commissioner Esrick, I believe, and I'm not going to speak for them, but I believe that future hotel site is also in for application currently with the city, and you will probably see them soon. I know they're getting ready to do their neighborhood meeting. That area, I know it's currently shown as blacktop there, but that will be their outdoor pool area for the hotel. It's intended to be integrated into the landscaping there, but it will be their outdoor pool and kind of patio area as it leads out to the Greenbelt. It will not be a blackscape like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can appreciate everything that's being said on both sides. The points that Commissioner Erstad brought up about the development. You know, I think there's you can look at the way that the landscape and hardscape integrates on the eastern edge of the site, and it seems like there's a lot more detailed development that goes into that space than when you look at, and you mentioned some of the challenges along that riverfront, you know, potentially with floodplains and what can be developed in that area. I guess in your research, could you share, are there limitations to the type of development that can be provided within that border that's along the river? Like there's kind of I don't want to say lack of sophistication, but like a lack of detailed development when when it comes to the landscape plan along that edge. And I don't know if that was intentional. You kind of see a little bit more detailed development on that southwest corner, and it kind of just dissipates as you go further to the north. And then you have this very active park area with kind of, it has the opportunity to be a more lively walking path, I think, along there. But I'm just curious if what you've encountered with the riverfront development.
Yeah, and not to bore you too much with the details, the 6,500 CFS line for the river really runs, and that's where the floodway is, runs right along the greenbelt there, and then the floodplain itself actually goes out into the site. We're required to raise the site by 2 feet for our building to be able to stay out of that, which adds its own element of interest there. But to answer your question, both of those buildings, the future hotel and the future wellness or whatever that pad ends up being there, have already discussed about engaging that area a little bit more above and beyond what our site plan is, but that would be at their discretion as an individual pad. They're going to come back in and discuss those items with you. And so it does maybe look a little more generic as you get along those buildings. But I do know that that future wellness pad area is the one that is pushing hard for us to go and help them engage the river, but that will be a part of their development portion there. So currently right now we've left this site plan as is, even though we think there's potential in the future that there's going to be additional stuff there. You know how this works. I come in here and show you a Cadillac all along the river there, and then that changes, then we have a different discussion. We'd rather be here showing you that we're going to do some landscaping there, and then that gets improved through each individual path that's happening along the river. We've been having those discussions with them right now. They have to come back in front of you as a part of this board to get their approval there. Those are all items that could be discussed at that time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none. Thank you. Any members of
Thank
the
you.
public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion then of the meeting, bring back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think what I see is that we have, a couple different applications in here. The CWI building obviously has much more developed site information because they're actively looking to develop that building. I appreciate that we need to see, this master plan really check, the items that we need it to approve it. But I also understand that, iteratively, this is going to come back with these individual pads that, we could ask them to look with when they have a building designed and their space is designed where we know that that's a pool space or an outdoor space that, they can take a harder look at that integration along that narrow part of it. I do appreciate, Commissioner Erstad's comments about, what the changes are. It's challenging, but I think that the applicant really has done what the city has asked to manipulate this. They've also taken in neighbor comments and concerns. It sounds like next month we'll be looking at a lot of this stuff. So I don't know if I share the concerns of Commissioner Erstad, but I do appreciate the conversation around it.
Mr. Simple. Yeah, it's an interesting position we are in with the approvals that are already in place and what we can actually act on tonight. So, through these developments that are complex with a lot of stakeholders in it, you may not always get the initial desired intent. But I'd agree with you, Mr. Simple, that I think they've worked with the city and the neighbors to provide what they can. And I guess the question for the commission would be, is there any additional conditions you'd want to add for further development of, some of that perimeter landscaping or park spaces as those other design reviews and submittals come in, or we can just leave it at that and address those when they do?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I would hesitate to add more conditions at this point, because until we're looking at a building design for the future hotel or the future wellness pad or whatever that ends up being, those individual buildings, I find it hard to place a condition of do this right here And then if they come in, I mean, again, sounds like we're hearing some of these things soon, or sooner than later, but it's hard to really condition them to do something if we haven't seen what their initial take is on the site plan and the building designs. It could totally change our opinion the next time we see an application come in, really. So,
Yeah, I guess my point was maybe not to put a condition on what he actually put there, but
Mhm.
just add a point that they're to work with that perimeter landscaping with any future pieces, because I think we're basically approving what they have here, and those pads will come in with their internal approvals
Yeah.
just to the pad at that time.
to me, it sounds like they're working on those buildings and that those users have indicated that they're working on that interface. Again, I find it hard to put a condition to change it at this point. I understand that where they could come in and give us a landscape plan that shows this, says you approved it and master planning, but I think we get another bite of the apple
Okay.
when they come in, and if it doesn't look right, I think we address it at that point.
Other comments, or maybe want to take a shot
Mr.
at-
Chair,
Yeah,
I-
Mr.
I-
Dunn.
Would like to know what the intent is with those streets and that circulation. Are those going to be deeded to ACHD for ownership moving forward, or are these going to remain internal private drives?
Yeah, staff can probably help us out with that.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the internal roads are service drives, they're private service drives. And I believe the applicant has had conversations with CCDC about some sort of public use easement that would allow CCDC to participate in some of those.
Thank you, Caitlin. Final comments? Anybody want to take a stab at a motion?
Caitlin, considering the technical wording of that, would you pull that up? Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Simple.
I'm going to move to approve DRH 24-00031 per the findings contained in the March 13th, 2024 action letter and application submittal documents dated February 8th, 2024 and February 22nd, 2024, except as modified by the updated submittal documents dated April 1st, 2025, June 3rd, 2025, August 1st, 2025, and August 4th, 2025, and the August 13th, 2025 work session memo with updated conditions of approval.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Simple.
I just feel like the applicant has addressed what we've asked them to address. I understand that there's an underlying, thoughts about the initial, what everyone was shown when this project, when everybody heard about it in 4 years ago, or whenever that was that CWI purchased this piece of property, but it might have been longer than that. But I appreciate the way that they've gone with it. And, I think that they've provided us some good detail on the parts of the application in front of us, and that there are some other opportunities to refine that interface with the river going forward as those other applications come in. That's why I move for approval.
Other discussion? Hearing none, Christina, you please call the roll.
Stumble,
I
Marsh,
Aye.
Erstad,
No.
Gesrick.
Aye.
3 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we can just roll right into the public hearing since we're a little over time on the work session anyways. We are hearing all 3 items on the agenda tonight, so.
Thanks, Josh. With that, the work session is adjourned, and now I'd like to call the August 13th, 2025 Design Review Commission regularly scheduled meeting to order. Christina, you please call the roll.
Stumble, Marsh,
Aye.
Aguilar, Erstad,
I am here.
Gesrick.
Here, aye.
4 present, 1 absent.
Okay, so I'll start with looking for a motion on the July 9th, 2025 work session and commission meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the commission meeting and work session meeting minutes from July 9th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Christina, call the roll.
Stifle,
Aye.
Marsh.
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
Gesrick.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. There are no consent items tonight, so the first item we will hear is item number 1. It's DRH 25-00184. Location is 500 West Washington Street. This time I'll turn it over to Caitlin for her report.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Stead.
I need to recuse myself from this hearing item.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Very good.
Sorry.
Right, thank you. This is application DRH 25-00184 for a 4-story commercial building with structured parking located on Washington Street between 5th Street and 6th Street. The property is comprised of 2 existing parcels that will be consolidated, and the existing structures and surface parking will be removed. The project was heard last month at the July 9, 2025 design review hearing, and the commission voted to defer the application for the applicant to make design revisions. In response to the feedback from the commission, the applicant has revised the building design to utilize a lighter color palette and add additional canopies. The applicant has also provided an updated landscape plan and active use diagram. To address concerns that the upper floors appeared to be floating above the base, the applicant has added additional brick and parking garage screens to create more connection. This also reduced the amount of EFS. The applicant is proposing the same brick color for the base and has also incorporated a lighter color brick that will add pedestrian interest. The previous dark colored EFS has been changed to a cream or light tan. Darker colored accents will provide contrast. The applicant has reduced the EFS on the south from approximately 33% to 27%, and on the west from 34% to 30%. The planning team believes this is still quite a large amount of EFS, so we are recommending the amount of the south and west facades be further reduced per the previously proposed condition. So that would be condition G at the bottom of this list, which says reduce the amount of EFS to not exceed 20% of the south and west facing facades. If the commission is okay with the current amount of EFS, you could strike that condition. All other original recommended conditions of approval have been retained, and we are proposing one additional condition, N, to provide visual screening of the parking levels along the alley to provide some additional privacy to the properties on the north side of the alley. Currently, there are no parking garage screens proposed on the alley. Also of note, the applicant is pursuing street access on 6th Street to reduce some of the alley traffic. They have submitted a formal request to the planning department, which is a director determination, so that will be reviewed and an administrative determination will be made. The planning team does recommend approval subject to the updated drawings with all original recommended conditions and the added condition N, and the applicant is available to present their updates.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions for staff at the moment from the commission?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Stead.
The discussion of 6th Street, you mentioned it, but it sounds like we have nothing to say about it. Is more FYI?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we received a request today for street access. So we have not had a chance to review it yet, but that is an administrative determination. So administratively, that will be reviewed and a determination would be made if the 6th Street access is granted. The applicant is still proposing the same alley access as well.
Thank you.
Is the applicant present? If you wouldn't mind, please state your name and address. for
Sorry,
the
just
record.
me again. Again, Ryan Cutler, Chief Development Officer for Allquist. My address is 1144 Silverstone Way in Meridian, Idaho 83642. Here representing Farm Bureau in this application tonight. Caitlin again did a great job. She really hit on a lot of the items that were a part of our discussion the last time we came through here and talked about this building. We're excited to be back here again talking about this. We really feel like the adjustments we have made took all of the feedback that we received from this commission and really took it to heart and made adjustments there. Again, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Farm Bureau because a lot of the adjustments that we are proposed and have been made here cost money and take time. And they were willing to make those adjustments to make sure that we are meeting the conditions of approval that are needed here to receive approval. So grateful for all parties involved and again for staff who has gone back and forth with us in several different meetings to make sure that we're doing what we need to on this site. I do also have with me Harley Elliott from LCA that will also present a few things after I'm done more on the technical side from the architectural standpoint. So you could also ask her any questions when she is up here. Just as a reminder, just as where we're at as far as the site plan with 6th Street, 5th Street in Washington, and then the alley to the top of the page there with a majority of our parking in the back side of the building there. And then again, the front side of the building is more of the retail / office component of what we're looking at here in this 4-story building. I know Caitlin mentioned this, and I apologize for sending in the letter about the parking or about the 6th Street access in today, but let me give a little context there. We've been working back and forth with ACHD and just recently received their letter that they would be okay with the access being taken off of 6th Street. That's why it got submitted a little bit late. I didn't have that letter from them until just recently, and I didn't want to submit and assume that something could happen there when they were going to come back and say no. And so that's the reasoning there. We recognize we're going to continue to have to work with them. If you've been out to the site in this location, there already is an access in that location being utilized on 6th Street. This isn't a new location for an access. It exists now. It's being utilized now adjacent to the alley. That's why you do not see one on 5th Street because there is not one on 5th Street there. That's why the access is being taken from the alley as was discussed last time in our meeting. Part of the reason also I want to bring up that we're doing it this way is from an overall flow standpoint, when you're coming one way on 6th Street going down or to the south, access is going to be easier from 6th Street as opposed to driving down the alley or driving all the way around the building and going in through the alley. We're trying to help alleviate any sort of conflict in the alley of people that are going to try to not go around the building, but just cut through and get to that drive. I think there could be some conflict there. We know alleyways are intended to be one way. That's not how they operate. People kind of find their way, right? The other reason why we're addressing it this way is, and I'm not sure if he's here tonight, we know that we have a neighbor to the north of us that was concerned about all of the access for this building coming in directly behind his parcel. By doing this, that separates that a little bit more so that we don't have as many stacking or people turning into that location because there are 2 different places that they can access this garage. The way that the ramping goes and the parking requirement by the city limits us a little bit of how we can design this building and make it work to hit our parking standards, which we've done, but it requires us to have the ramp in the location where it is. That's why you see the 5th Street access off the alley and the 6th Street access off the existing access off the ACHD roadway. And again, appreciate Mindy Wallace and her team at ACHD that provided that letter saying that they would be okay with a access being maintained at 6th Street. Just to kind of run through from our previous meeting, we did get a lot of feedback from members of this commission. I want to run through them briefly just so you know that we accomplished those things. Different landscaping items. The Design Commission would like to see inclusion of more evergreens. We've done that in our plans, and you can see there by our charting of what's being there. We've made those adjustments to make sure that those plantings are appropriate for what this commission would like to see. Additionally, the feedback was concerned about the active use meeting the zoning code, which is a minimum of 60%. I will let Harley talk about that a little bit more later. But we have gone through and we've created our active use diagram, and we know that that meets that code. 61.4% is what we have currently right now, and that is not including any bike parking or stair access. So that is in addition to those items. So it actually probably is a little bit higher if you count those items. on site. That was some feedback we received last time. Want to make sure that we pointed out that that got taken care of. And again, this is just showing a little bit of the exterior of the building that can show some of that activation from whether it is patio seating, walking areas. This is also showing the canopies that are being used along the site, which I know has been kind of a sticking point with this commission before on the canopies. We want to make sure that that was being appropriately shown here. And then again, just along Fifth Street, you're getting to see a little bit of the screening of the garage area on that side where the ramp is. And then again, some of the activation and parking and tree wells that are along Fifth Street on the east side of the building. Additional feedback that we received on the building, and I know Caitlin touched on this already, and I appreciate what she mentioned. Dark colors, few canopies, needs more character, needs more connection from ground floor to upper floor, which I know Caitlin talked about. And then the parking screening was preferred, was the statement that was made in our last meeting. Response to that, I think you already saw a picture of the new building, which I'll flip to here in a second. But just lighter main colors and accents, which I know was some comments from members of this commission and the neighbors also, that it didn't fit the character of the area based on the color of the building. It kind of stood out too much. We've made that adjustment so that it will be more of fit in with the character of the area based on its color. Again, we talked about the canopies. I've already showed a picture of that. And then the transition through the second story with brick into other materials on the top portion of the building was something that was discussed. We wanted to make sure that we pointed out that we've extended that to make sure that the first and second floor materials are of a high quality material, because that's where most of the visualization people will see of the building as they walk up to it or around it. And then the parking screening has been added, and you'll see that as I move to the next picture of the currently designed building. As you look at the same area there, you can see the transitions in that brick area to the materials above. And again, Harley will talk a little more directly about what that transition looks like. Is a lot smoother and cleaner, and really develops character and builds and fits the character of the area that is there now without deviating too much from the existing building. Again, we talk about this on in the last hearing, but we're trying to do the best we can to meet the standards of the city and the standards of this commission. Also, while working with a company that has to spend the money to build the building, and it's got a pencil for a building to work. And so we feel like we've really hit a happy medium there, where we're meeting the standards that the city would like to see there, and then also making it possible for the Farm Bureau team to be able to actually go out and build a building that will be a benefit to the community. The discussion on EFS, I know we always have this discussion, and here we are having the discussion again. It's a common thing. I guess just as a reminder on the requirements from the city code on EFS, the requirement on city code for EFS is 50% or less. That's what the code states. When we came here in our previous hearing, we were at 33.2 and 33.9 in our last hearing, which again is well below the required 50% EFS on a building. In an effort to meet the discussion that we had last time on the building, we went back and made adjustments where we could and reduced again the amount of EFS down to 26.8 on the south and 30 on the west. Again, I know this doesn't meet exactly. Staff was looking to try to be in the 20 range. Again, I will remind, not to belabor this point, the standard is 50. Where we are right now is well below what is required in an attempt, obviously, to meet what this commission and staff is eager to hit. And we've done the best we can to make sure that the building still functions and works well, and from a cost perspective can be built while trying to reduce the amount of EFS to accommodate what was discussed previously by this commission. And I think credit to LCA and their team for really working hard to find that area where it's going to work for both parties. And we think that we've hit that mark. So I know that Caitlin mentioned that there is a condition in there that can be left, or it can be taken out, or can be modified. We would happy with it being taken out, or we would propose that the condition item G read that we would reduce the amounts of EVIS to not exceed 27% on the south facade and not to exceed 30% on the west facade, which is what you see in the building that we are presenting this evening. I'm going to turn a little bit of time over to Harley to discuss a little bit more of the material palette and different things on this building. And then if needed, could stand up and stand for any questions that you might have after she's done.
Good, thank you. Holly, if you would, please state your name and record.
My name's Harley Elliott with Lombard Conrad Architects, and my address is 472 West Washington Street. Ryan touched a lot on what we heard from the commission last time and how we are trying to incorporate with the client's initial design intent. And I think what we mostly got back from the feedback from last time was the color palette and the lack of character. So when we went back, we really tried to address that while maintaining that kind of like sweet spot between the client's original vision for this building as a standout building and taking cues from the context as well. Obviously the color is a lot lighter, but we tried to keep in those darker accents when it comes to the lobby area. So the main central bay. Oh yes. Okay. Forgot about that. And the top is is the diagram we presented last time, and the bottom is all the changes. So you can see we added a larger contrasting top of wall detail, so a metal parapet essentially that kind of caps the rest of the building while connecting back to that central lobby space that is dark, kind of at a request of the Farm Bureau and what they wanted. That's going to be a lap seam metal panel with some aluminum brake metal detailing as well. And that also connects back to the windows used, that you have a metal panel and then framed by some aluminum to kind of create that verticality. And as you go up the building, you start with the base, in which we added more brick to that second level, as Ryan mentioned, so that there's no EVIS on the first and second level where those pedestrians would see it. And we added more canopies because I know we talked about the minimum number of canopies over the entries, but to expand upon that, now you have a canopy over every storefront as well as an even larger canopy at that entry space in the center. And as you go up, you get the brick isn't flat. We wanted to add a level of interest there by adding a secondary brick color as well as subtle recesses as you go from the bottom to the top. Another comment we had was kind of this floating black box on top of a brick base and didn't really have that connection. So with a suggestion of parking screening, we tried to use that as another element to connect the top to the bottom and cap it off with that cap again. So that's kind of just a different view where you get a good look at the thickness of the EVIS. I know that is a contentious material, but we wanted to add different planes of EVIS and shadow lines so that cap kind of protrudes further than our thickest EVIS. You've got the pilasters that are kind of the second hierarchy, and then your main body with the windows and the EVIS in between. And then these are just an updated material so you can see every elevation and not just that southern street facing one. We tried to continue the pattern and changes. Any changes we made on those street facing, we kind of tried to loop around into that north facing alley while still being a cost effective and looking at what the client wants. We did notice, well, we looked at the conditions for approval and we do want to add screening to that north side. That is completely fine. So we'll probably bring that screening down further to the first level as well, just in that same pattern. Yeah, so we tried to incorporate all the things we heard from you as a commission with what the client needs and trying to balance that all out. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Questions for the applicant at the moment? No. Seeing none, is there a neighborhood association here? No. Okay, great. Any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item here tonight? Yep. Oh yes, come on up, Susan. Susan, if you will, just for the record, state your name and address.
Susan DeSalhorst, 421 West Franklin Street. And I'm going to have to talk fast because Mohaw's had an emergency. So, and both of us. So Mo is the neighbor directly north of the entrance to the garage. And so that's still a big point. I'm really happy to see that they're using the 6th Street. But as the applicant said, we all want to think that the alleys are one way, but we know that they're not. And so there's going to be a lot of congestion. It's already a pinch point on 5th Street there because of the screwy intersection at Fort. And so I just worry with the entry to the garage being right there at 5th, that it's really just going to mess everything up. If it could get moved down into like the center, I know it's probably going to screw with the ramps and all of that, but anyhow, that would be preferred by us. The north side still, it's mostly concrete block and AFAS, and I'm glad to hear that they want to put some screening on there. That'll help a lot too. I was happy to see the change in the colors. But you know, this building is surrounded by some of the most important buildings in the state. We've got the Capitol building, the old Ada County Courthouse, the Supreme Court, Lombard Conrad's building is amazing. The VA. And so it just needs to be a building that'll stand the test of time with those buildings. And not just something that they put up with the cheapest construction materials that they could use, and that would be allowed, even if it is allowed by code. I think that the people of Boise deserve better in that neighborhood, especially. I mean, even the parking garages down there are nice. So anyhow, so possibly an art installation, maybe, you know, it just needs to be dressed up and just a little less. 55% of the north side is concrete block and EFS. That just seems like it's just a throwaway. So, and could we have something other than gum trees? They're so messy. And obviously you don't have a dog. And a non-illuminated sign would be lovely. It's just inappropriate in that neighborhood. And we'd ask that construction start immediately after demolition, so we don't have that 4th and Idaho situation where we had a dirt lot that was covered in graffiti and that we had to look into for 2 years. And protection of the trees on the adjacent properties. Those are kind of a lot of our concerns. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to testify tonight? Seeing none in person. Josh, any online? Great. Would the applicant like to come up and say a couple last words? If you wouldn't mind, Ryan, just stating your name again.
Yes, Ryan Cutler. Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate, we knew who was going to be here tonight. They were at the last hearing, and we appreciate their comments. And as we've gone through this process, have had those individuals, whether it was Mo or Susan and those individuals in mind as we've gone through that. And I think part of the reason why we understand the congestion on the roadway, that's part of the reason why we were pushing so hard for us to get a 6th Street access, is to help eliminate some of that congestion that might happen there, where if all of the access was taken at that location, you might have some stacking that takes place on 5th Street, which is what we're trying to avoid. Just maybe a little more information about the building itself. The access to these garages will be the kind that doesn't have an activated arm on it. So people that will be driving into it will just drive directly into it. And it's monitored by camera and how you pay in those different situations. So we've done it that way to eliminate any sort of stacking of people having to wait to pull the ticket, do all of those things, so that it won't cause any more issues on 5th or 6th Street. Susan's right. Alleys are intended to be one way, but we know it's not going to be. And our other concern was that people coming down 6th Street were just going to turn into that alley to try to get to the garage quicker instead of going around the street. That's why we pushed ACHD to allow, and are working with the city to allow for an additional access on 6th Street to eliminate some of that taking place from a safety standpoint. We also recognize it would be good to try to move the access point in the alley to other locations. We tried several times. We've had several iterations. LCA who obviously is right close by to this building where their office is. We tried to move it to several different locations, and for us to be able to meet the parking requirement that is needed for the type of building we have, the ramp configuration that we have right now is the only way, and we literally hit our parking numbers pretty much dead on. Doing it in other ways, because of turning radiuses, eliminates parking stalls and makes it really challenging for us to be able to get the number of parking we need there. So we have taken that in consideration as we've gone through multiple iterations of this project. As far as signage goes, we'll have to go through the city and meet all the signage requirements. That happens there. We'll be applying for that application, and we'll work with the city and staff on what the most appropriate signage will be for that location and building type there. And then as far as the zoning, I know part of the concern as well in the previous hearing was there was some discussion by this. It was actually Commissioner Johnson, who's not on here anymore, but part of the concern was that we were building a building near some residential areas. And I guess the point I would make there is we, as the applicant here, didn't rezone this property. We didn't come in with a rezone to try to build this building. This property was already zoned by the city of Boise in the MX zone it is in now. And so we're merely just complying with the requirements of an already approved zoned area. I know some of the neighbors were concerned about what was classified as the cheapness of this building. I can assure you this building is not cheap based on the dollar amount it is to get to this point, not to mention the number of changes that we've made to make upgrades to help accommodate some of the comments that have made that as a cost to the client that's putting in there. They were willing to do that to make sure that they could meet the needs of the surrounding area and this commission and staff. So I appreciate and commend Farm Bureau for being willing to do that, because they could have said no and come back and said, try to push that exact same building through and we're going to just go with that. They were willing to make those changes. It says a lot about what they're trying to do and try to be good neighbors in downtown Boise. Let's stand for any other questions.
Thanks. Other questions for the applicant and commission? Seeing none? Great. Thank you very much. Well, with that, we'll close the public portion of the testimony, bring back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I appreciate the iteration that has been done and the incorporation of the feedback that was given. I think that some of the discussion around this is kind of, my fellow commissioners are going to roll their eyes at hearing me talk about design by numbers again, but I think it reiterates the fact that we have something of a design standard in the city, but it's kind of like a bare minimum design standard, and you can comply with the design standard and still not have a great building. I think this is a decent attempt so far, but I think getting to kind of the quality, the stateliness, the appropriateness given the context, there are probably some more iterations that I would undertake. I'd like to hear Caitlin's take on the 50% versus 20% EFS. I would always push for less. I know there are some limitations to what we can push for, but I think that, what is worthy of this corner, I would certainly say, if I were doing this, I would have those pilasters go to the parapet and really integrate this as a singular building, instead of it. I think the irony is that by adding that masonry at the second floor, it's actually really reinforced that datum that kind of separates the top from the bottom. One suggestion that I might make, while being cognizant of cost and what is the percent of EFS allowed, is this building has a sense of rhythm, particularly at the ground floor. I think extending those pilasters to the parapet would bring that rhythm all the way through the facade. But if that is so infeasible that it would tank this project, then maybe it's keeping the lighter material in alignment with that rhythm at the ground floor, and then along the top as well, and within those boxes creating a contrasting look. You know, maybe that's a dark ephes, or it's the dark formed metal panel that would kind of create a more unified look to the panels within these more rhythmic gestures. I'm still not convinced that the ramp is the best solution. I think particularly now that we're hearing indication that access off of 6th Street is being considered, I think having 2 access points means it's feasible that you could do a speed ramp across the 300 feet that is the width of that site, accessed from 6th Street, and then off of 5th Street, you could actually pull down beneath that. You would still have all of the or more parking stalls within the layout of that speed ramp and deck on the 2nd floor, and then you would have the increased stall count beneath it as well, which would more than make up for your minimum parking requirements. I think, you know, there's still improvement that could be made, but I think we're moving in the right direction at the very least. One other thing I would say about the speed ramp option would be that you could actually pull your bike parking to the exterior. I know that it doesn't technically count as active frontage, but I would lobby that it could if you were to put a storefront in front of it and treat it well. And I think it would be a more active frontage than the benches, which I still disagree with that assessment as an active frontage. I think that screening the garage would be the proper approach. I think it's neighborly. The neighbors are not going to like to hear this, but I would say that, you know, in exchange for more masonry along the south, east, and west, I would horse trade a little more ephes along the north side, provided it were, you know, really intentionally and thoughtfully detailed. Those are my takes.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr.
You know, my primary comments on at our last hearing were regarding the landscape plan. I went through that pretty substantially. I really like the new landscape design and the plant selections, and I think it's a very good diversity of what will make for a great street space frontage. Again, I probably don't have as strong of opinions about ephes as some of the other members of the commission do. I do really appreciate the changes that have been made, though. I think that it's definitely lightened this building, which I think fits much better into this neighborhood.
Keatlin, could you bring up that kind of street view, perspective view of the building as well, just for, yeah, there you go. I'm not convinced that bringing the masonry up is going to be beneficial. I do like the larger mass with the regular rhythm that goes there, that I think has a nod to some of the adjacent buildings, like the Supreme Court, and some of the thinness of the pilaster pieces. I think the change in thickness to the ephes assists with the verticality of those pilasters being pulled up to the cornice. I do like the dark pencil line edge that brings a termination to the building against the skyline. Personally, I think the canopies and the higher quality materials up to that 2nd level, I don't know that the perception at 3rd level and up on the ephes is going to be overwhelmingly perceived. Overall, I like the changes that have been made. Could we always ask and wish for a little bit more, of course, but I do think this is a successful change from the comments and stuff that they received previously. Was Mr. Stad, did you want to get or somebody clarification from staff on EFS percentage? Anybody? No. Okay.
I don't think it's fully necessary. I think it remains a condition of approval.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, it's simple.
And so I'm assuming that based on the condition of approval, you would not want to modify that and you'd want it to be 20%, or would you, I mean, it sounds, or
I guess, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Semple, I think this is acceptable as resubmitted, particularly if it is in alignment with what you think this neighborhood and corner require. I want to get rid of that ramp. I think that's not an acceptable use for that corner. But material wise,
Yeah, I guess I'd be in agreement with the applicant's comment to go with 27% on the south and 30% on the west. Trying to pick and choose little parts and pieces to change from
Yeah.
EFS, just get that percentage, I think could have more of a detriment than an improvement.
I would agree.
Well, that'd be open for a motion or further discussion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion so that maybe that spurs more conversation. I would move to approve DRH 25-00184 as recommended in the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended conditions of approval noted in the project report, with a modification to condition G to reduce the amount of EFS to not exceed 27% on the south and 30% on the west facing facades, and with the addition of condition N regarding screening at the two parking levels along the alley.
So moved. Thing. I'll second that. So since we're a limited number of members here today, it's moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
I mean, this is our one shot at this. So I would posit the addition of condition O that is conditional. If a second access point can be gained to the garage, I would like to eliminate the corner of the building parking ramp.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I ask a
Simple.
clarifying question?
Absolutely.
All right, so if ACHD approves their 6th Street access, you want to eliminate the ramp? I mean, the ramp's going to be somewhere in the building, right?
It is, but I think there are other solutions for it, and I think that
Sure.
there's almost any other solution that would be it would create a better
Gotcha.
building. We're here to protect the public realm, and I don't think that interacts with the public realm well.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would be willing to add that condition to my motion,
You're revising condition O
adding condition.
or
O.
adding condition O. I'm sorry. Okay. I accept the motion as a seconder. Second.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I don't need to second it because it's been seconded
Okay.
and revised and moved.
Moved in second. Can we call the roll?
Temple,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is item number 2, DRH 24-00090, location 1770 South Maple Grove. Again, we'll turn that over to Caitlin for her presentation report.
Right, thank you, commissioners. This is application DRH 2490 at 1770 South Maple Grove for a 162-unit multifamily project with 8 3-story buildings, a clubhouse, and associated site improvements. The property is located on the east side of Maple Grove, approximately 300 feet south of Overland Road. There's a wide mix of uses in the surrounding area, including single-family residential and a variety of commercial uses, including offices, retail, restaurant, as well as religious institutions. The applicant received approval to change the designated land use of this property to compact. To the north, it's a commercial land use, and to the south, east, and west, the land use is suburban. Additionally, the applicant received approval to rezone the property to R2. The zones to the north are mixed use, and to the south, east, and west are residential. Due to the adjacent R1C zone to the south and the R1A zone to the east, the applicant will provide landscape buffers consisting of solid 6-foot fencing, trees, and shrubs along these properties. Additionally, the applicant will comply with the neighborhood transition standards, which require increased building and parking setbacks. The applicant has laid out the site to provide a public street connection through the project with the extension of Mohican Avenue to Vincent Street. 1 vehicle access is proposed on Maple Grove, 1 on Vincent Street, and 2 on Mohican Avenue. The main east-west drive is a private service drive. The buildings are placed along the streets with parking to the side and rear. The south buildings are oriented to reduce impacts on the residential properties to the south. The applicant is proposing additional trees beyond the code requirements, including within the south and east landscape buffers. Over 50 of the trees are indicated as Class 3 species. The project will provide detached sidewalks. The applicant is also providing a 10-foot wide pathway from Maple Grove to the Mohican extension. The commission received a memo regarding removing condition B to continue the pathway to the east property boundary. The planning team is supportive of removing this condition due to site constraints and believe the pedestrian and bike network will be complete without the pathway continuation. The applicant is proposing building designs that utilize residential elements, including sloped roofs, brick and hardy plank siding, and residential skilled windows that will complement the character of the adjacent residential neighborhoods. A blue and a green color scheme are proposed, and the building types include slight design variations to provide interest. This perspective is from Maple Grove. The building facing Maple Grove will have doors and patios facing the street. The buildings include material changes and facade modulation to add visual interest and avoid a flat appearance. The applicant has also included a window detail indicating windows will be recessed the minimum 2 inches from the facade to provide depth. The planning team recommends approval with removal of site-specific condition B, which will allow the pathway to remain as proposed. And I believe the applicant is in agreement with all the other recommended conditions and is available to give a presentation.
Thanks, Caitlin. Any questions for applicant? Great. Is the applicant present? And if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Ethan Mansfield, representing Hawkins Companies, 855 West Broad Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I think Caitlin did an excellent job recapping the project. I will not take long because it was such a great presentation. It is located on the southeast corner of Maple Grove and Overland, about 700 feet south of the intersection, so south of Overland. It's zoned R2 residential compact, and it's just over 6 acres. We're proposing 162 multifamily homes. That's across 2 parcels. The western parcel is 4.2 acres. Eastern parcel is going to be 1.6 acres. And we're proposing to dedicate about 1/3 of an acre as a public right-of-way for an extension of Mohican to provide the connectivity through the site, public connectivity through the site. The project consists of 8 3-story multifamily buildings. The maximum height of these are 38 feet. Most of the buildings max out at about 36.5, 37. The amenities include clubhouse with pool, barbecue, yard games, tot lot, pet park. We're proposing 257 parking spaces, which is 123% of the minimum required parking. This is below the maximum allowed parking of 125% of minimum. It's a lot of numbers. Thanks for bearing with me. We're also proposing 300 bike parking stalls. This far exceeds the required amount of bike parking. And we have about 4.5 times the required amount of open space. Here's a depiction of the site plan. We've got primary entrances off of Maple Grove Road, and then also the project can be accessed through Vincent Street or south through Mediterranean and Mohican. This is just a little recap of the site history of the project. Caitlin basically mentioned it. We had a comp plan amendment to compact land use, rezoned R2, and we're allowed a residential density of up to 174 units. We met with staff extensively since September 10th. This is why it's taken a while to get before you today to address the conditions imposed by City Council. Staff has deemed that we have in fact addressed these. And I just want to quickly show you how. So transition standards are met. We've provided this public roadway, a 10-foot pathway through the site, provides a low stress kind of addition to the bike network to access the Vanell Street Bikeway over here. We have provided a micro mobility station along Maple Grove Road. We've kind of made a kind of concerted effort to kind of decrease the kind of impacts to the R1C zone to the south by orienting all of the buildings that are adjacent to the southern neighbors north-south. And we meet all the neighborhood transition standards and code. Here's our mobility plan. This is a little depiction of a micro mobility station. We located adjacent to the 10-foot pathway at staff's request. It used to be over here. We also, I think, really uniquely provided far more than the required buffer along both the eastern side and the southern side of the site to ensure that those neighbors would not experience, would experience less of an impact from the development. So the transition would be a little more soft. So double the amount of trees on the east side and an additional 16 trees on the south side. And I'll let Marla Carson, our architect, talk a little bit about the design kind of ethic.
Great. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
You bet. I'm Marla Carson, architect, 3684 West Heidelberg in Eagle, 83616. I'm an architect that's worked on a variety of projects over the last 25 years, but recently have been focusing on multifamily projects because they've always been my favorite project type. And specifically on this project, we wanted the project to be rentable and usable as well as aesthetically pleasing. And then sustainability is a key element of the exterior design, but also includes interiors by creating plenty of storage and plans that work for both tenants with roommates as well as families. The residences are designed to be complementary to the neighborhood and to incorporate sustainable development practices, including the use of fiber cement siding, brick siding, asphalt, roofing, covered entries, composite trim, and steel railings. These materials are long lasting, and the use of covered entries provide further longevity to the project by protecting the points of entry from weather and related wear. Important key to sustainability is also creating buildings that are buildable and affordable, so rent rates can remain affordable. The buildings are designed to include roof lines that have good drainage. Walls and entries are protected from the elements, and energy efficient materials, including double pane low E window glazing, are included. Appreciate your time for letting us share this project, and we look forward to seeing it be a valuable asset to the community.
Thank you.
And I'll just run quickly. It's me again. I'll just run quickly through some of the renderings, just so you can get kind of a better feel for the site itself. And Marla, if you have any comments on these renderings, feel free to jump in. This one's taken from Maple Grove, kind of looking to the southeast at the entranceway. There will be a micro mobility station located right here. It's not shown since these renderings were produced initially before we agreed to move it to the adjacent to the 10-foot pathway. Here's a rendering of the clubhouse, again, looking southeast. I think we've got a really nice clubhouse with a lot of kind of nice articulation and features, storefront windows, brick running up the columns. Kind of, Marla, can you remind me what these cool little things are called? The knee braces. Yeah, I think they look really cool. And then here's a perspective as you're driving into or walking into the development from the south to the north along Mohican. You can kind of see these covered entries here to address the street. And this one is looking as you enter from Vincent Street, kind of on that sidewalk on the north side of Vincent. So with that, we'd like to respectfully request your approval of DRH 2490. We agree with all the conditions in the staff report, and we'd like to thank Caitlin for her time and putting that together. And we will happily stand for any questions.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for the applicant from the commission?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stead.
Are you guys, I thank you for the presentation. I think this is, this perfectly matches a garden style kind of suburban approach to multifamily. You mentioned the differentiation in materiality to break up the massing. Are you open to suggestions on that? I think one of the more successful movements that you've done on there was kind of where the verticals were of a single color, and then you could call it like maybe the field color behind it was also a different but singular color, and it breaks up the length into a more bite-sized facade rather than the height. I think that the height is what it is, and you might as well celebrate the verticality of some of those parts. But then by making those kind of units stand together a little bit more, and maybe even introducing one or two other colors for a little bit of diversity's sake, it reduces the perception of this long wall down to a series of shorter walls.
Commissioner Marsh, Commissioner Erstad, I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually on our longer building, Caitlin encouraged that, and we did make changes on that long building to break up the massing in that way. We basically changed the color of the vertical column, extended it a little bit taller actually to kind of basically separate the kind of, exactly what you're speaking about, to kind of break it up. The shorter ones we didn't feel, and I think Caitlin can echo this, neither one of us felt like it was actually warranted on the less long buildings, but on those longer ones, we've absolutely incorporated that. So yeah, I think it's a great concept.
Any other questions for that? None online, I guess. All right. So thank you very much. Other members of the public wishing to testify to this item or neighborhood association representative? No, it's just the architect on the sign up. Seeing none in person, you do have one online, okay? When you're able online, please state your name and address for the record.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Chris Sable. We live at 8703 West Vincent Street, which is directly adjacent to the east side of the development in process, and just wanted to address a few concerns and then just get some clarification if it's possible. I'm not sure if this is the place for that, but I wanted to at least just mention a few things and see if there may be some consideration for that moving forward with the rest of the development.
Sure, go ahead.
So question I had was the complex being built, it's within I think 15 feet of our property line, and our driveway runs right along that. And so conversation that I had, I think it was last year with Ethan Mansfield concerning that property line, was that we could have some kind of a berm established to where we could at least raise up some kind of a fence a little taller than 6 feet from the ground, and try to protect our private residents, family, and the situation that we've just encountered to have to learn how this was going to be, where the building's going to sit, and then it's going to be 3 stories high, fortunately not 4. And that I wanted to find out what was being considered for a berm, or was this just going to be flat level with our property line, and wanted to find out something concerning that and if that's possible.
Yeah, we can let the applicant address that in his rebuttal, but if you have any other comments to consider?
Yes, just wanted to question, the trees that are sitting along that property line also sit on the property line, and not sure who determines that those get taken down. And is that something that's just determined by the city, or isn't it the people who own the property or share the property?
Okay.
And
Great,
then
yeah.
also, there was one other thing. Once this process goes forward, and, you know, I see that the trees are there, there's some, they don't seem very tall growing, like a skyrocketing juniper or arborvitae of some kind along the property line for that. And I didn't know if that's something, is this set in stone on what kind of trees are being used along there? I think the bushes and everything are great, but I think they don't play into the conversation of what we're doing in order just to be able to protect our, property line for that entire east border of the development. And I just wanted to see if those thoughts can be considered as we move forward, and then maybe even work in conjunction to help developing something, not only with maybe an agreement, or maybe Hawkins Development offering some help with that, or we can actually purchase trees or whatever and plant them ourselves as part of this, not to so much detract from what your thought was and how the development should be, but also just in, I guess, kind of a meeting of a halfway of decision on how that will be left as it is, if we, as this moves forward and gets approved. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that,
Yep.
and we'll see how we can do.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? We have one more online. Okay. And when able, the next person on the online comments, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Max Veneris. I live at 8952 West Mediterranean Court. I live along the south end of the proposed development. I guess my biggest comment, to echo Chris's from just now, is in deciding which of those trees come out. I know there are a lot of large trees along the fence line. There's a lot of vegetation along the fence line. I see in their plan they had submitted that a lot of that's supposed to go back in. However, I can't help but notice that, actually living in the along the stretch, on their plan sheet that they had submitted, PP 1.1, they have what looks like where the drainage ditch is supposed to be. That drainage is currently an open channel, and currently it's basically a stream that runs 3 seasons of the year when we have irrigation water. I know that that's probably going to go away, and it's unfortunate that's going to go away, as that supports a lot of our urban wildlife. But I also know that that's the low point of the property. So, for example, where everybody on my side of the street live along that south property line of where these guys are trying to develop, it's got to be 5 to 10 feet higher in elevation. Maybe not 10, but it's got to be 5 feet higher. So when they're talking about putting a 6-foot fence up in where that canal currently, or where that ditch, that stream, the creek currently is, their top of fence is going to be at the same elevation as my back door. So all of a sudden the offsets that we're talking about are not nearly as big because of this big elevation difference. I don't think that that's successfully being addressed in this plan, especially looking at where that fence is. And something that I would like to have you guys continue to ask the developer about, or at least the city review board ask the developer about, because it's not addressed. I also know that that irrigation pipe they're supposed to be connecting into that number 6 bullet is not there, or at least not that whole system needs to be relooked at. And it's still incredible to me that there's no traffic impact study for this. I mean, we're talking about an additional 900 trips being generated, and there's no traffic impact study. I don't know. I won't take any more of our time, but
Thank you for comments. And I think that concludes the number of our online folks. Again, anybody else in the public want to testify here tonight in person? And sir, if you would please state your name and address for the record when you get up here.
My name is Robert McGarvey. I live at 8801 West Mediterranean Court. From what I've learned today and so on, I would really like to thank Ethan and Hawkins for cooperating with this. They've done a lot to make the transition smoothly. I dislike what's going on. It changes our neighborhood, but they've made it as good as they possibly could under the circumstances, and I do want to thank them for that. My concerns is traffic, and I think everybody here knows about traffic and the going to the south. We've got going to have 4 lanes all the way down to Amity. So that's a huge draw, and we will get a lot of traffic. I think the one project starts in 2028, and then there's a design project that starts in 2027. So when all that is done, why we'll have a lot of traffic. So I'm glad we have a road 3 entries going into the project, so that we'll get some of that traffic in our neighborhood. Vanell will get some of their traffic, and some of it will go out on Maple Grove on the main entrance. So it will all help all of us. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to testify tonight? Seeing none, turn this back over to the applicant to make any final comments and address some of the points brought up earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Marsh. Let's first talk a little bit about the trees. I think, I actually channeled my inner Elaine Clegg when I thought about trying to save the trees. And I went to the design team and I said, guys, is there any way we can work to save these trees? And what we found out was just in terms of establishing the gravity irrigation pathway in a safe way, which is, piping it so it's not running around above ground, that in of itself would have taken out the roots to the trees and would have killed the trees. And so we knew that before we even started. And it is unfortunate because I for one really love big trees in my city, but we also need to build housing for people. So, this is the trade-off here. But we did look at it, we explored it, because that was the first thing I said is, look, if we can save these trees along the perimeter, it's going to be better. We can't save them. We took a good look at it. So that's the trade-off, is housing or trees here in this particular case. We also took a lot of care in selecting our tree species mix, especially along the eastern and southern border. And I know it's really tough to see in a landscape plan that doesn't have color, that has little circles on it. I think we've all run into that problem of trying to understand what's going to be there. these renderings, I really want to compliment our landscape architect, Alyssa, because these renderings actually portray the trees that are going to be planted there. So if we can go, Caitlin, back to the presentation, I can happily, show you kind of, we can relook at the rendering. So all of these are actually things that are going to be here. So let's go kind of to this guy here. So this is like the tree species mix. And we actually, took care to, the neighbors said, we don't want big, messy trees. We don't want messy trees because that's going to drop in our backyard. So we chose trees that were vertical, not super horizontal, but vertical and screening. And that's reflected in the tree species mix. And we planted more of them than we, typically would have in a project like this. So hopefully that addresses the tree species mix and then the existing trees. The berm is tricky. We also looked at a berm. There's a couple kind of big challenges to the berm. The first one being, there's 15 feet between the property boundary and the building. That gives us enough for a 1.5 foot tall berm. Not a lot. Drainage is a challenge when you have roof drains coming off the back. You don't want to berm it down into your project. Secondarily, and I don't know if the city has changed on this, but basically, we used to tell people when I worked at the city, your maximum fence height 62 or 72 inches, 6 feet tall. You can't really, technically, you're not supposed to go over that height by building a berm and then a fence on top of that. And there's actually a graphic in Boise City Code that shows that as like, you have to have 5 feet of separation between a berm or a wall and then another fence for it to be considered, separate 72 foot inch things. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I think it is. I see Caitlin nodding her head. So I don't know if we can even do that per code. Finally, I think that if this is something that Chris is really interested in, we can certainly work with him. It will require grading onto his property and it becomes a much larger thing, but we're not opposed to looking at it if the city will allow us to have a berm or anything that's higher than 6 feet. So I'll talk with Caitlin about that. We're not opposed to doing it if they're okay with it, but just to clarify, it will involve some energy and effort from Chris's side as we'll need to go on his property. We'll need to get it surveyed, to kind of design around that. So, Chris, we're totally willing to work with you on that if that's really something that we want to get into, but that's the reason it's not shown in our plans and it can be a real challenge. Finally, met with ACHD long ago, talked with them about a variety of things, especially this roadway alignment, which they're supportive of at this stage. And well, hopefully, no surprises, hopefully we continue to be supportive of. And they also confirmed that no TIS is required for this project. So that is the reason we did not develop a TIS.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any last questions or anything for the applicant? Commission? All right, seeing none, thanks. Close the public portion, bring it back to the commission for discussion and motion. Yeah, it appears that the applicants worked well with the neighbors on this. I think it's a pretty attractive site plan. It's got great connectivity. I think the comments that suggestions that Mr. Erstad had were well received as well. Sounds like the applicant is still willing to work with the neighbors when possible. So appears to be a good application that with strong support. With
Mr.
that,
Chair?
yeah, Ms.
I would move to approve DRH 24-00090 according to the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval outlined in the staff report.
So moved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
does that include the memo to remove site-specific condition B?
It does.
So we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on a motion? Hearing none, can we call the roll, please?
Semple,
Aye.
Marsh,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
Gesrick.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on, our final item for tonight is item number 3, CRH 25-00227. Its location is 1010 West Jefferson Street. And with this one, we'll turn it over to Catherine for presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. The subject property is approximately 0.84 acres located on the north side of West Jefferson Street between North 10th and 11th Street in downtown MX5 mixed-use zone. It is on the south half block of the new YMCA, which is under construction. The surrounding areas comprise a variety of commercial uses. The project is for a new 6.5-story parking garage with ground floor commercial space. The garage will provide about 426 parking stalls, which would include 20% EV-capable parking in 6 EV-ready spaces. And there will also be a 700 square foot bike boy facility to provide 34 covered and secured bicycle parking spaces on the ground floor. The design promotes ground floor activation. Approximately 84% of the ground floor is activated by commercial and public uses. This satisfies the minimum 80% of street frontage activation requirement required by the MX5 use-specific standards. The garage proposed to take access from North 10th Street instead of the backing alley. This would mitigate issues with tight turning radius and the reduced congestions due to two-way traffic in the alley. As such, the planning team is in support of this layout. Also, the alley is proposed to be transformed into a pedestrian-focused passage with lightings and special paving patterns. The project plans to remove 7 on-street parking stalls along the parcel to create 1 ADA parking and loading zone on Jefferson Street, and extra landscaping and sidewalk on both Jefferson Street and 10th Street. Considering the amount of public parking spaces this project will provide to downtown and the benefit of protected bike lane and enhanced pedestrian realm, the planning team is in support of this proposal to remove on-street parking. The project seeks departures from several downtown streetscape standards to extend the paving geometries into the public right-of-way instead of using the urban concrete paving topology required by the streetscape standards. It also requests to use a smaller size tree grade and a different site furnishing design. The planning team has reviewed the proposal and made recommendation to the proposed departures. The applicant is in agreement with the recommended conditions except for the tree grade. The applicant contends that using a smaller size tree grade with 4 feet by 4 feet dimension instead of 4 by 8 dimension required by the standards will allow for more pedestrian space. And they also contends that the suspended paving system installed around the street trees will allow the tree roots to grow. Thus, a larger size tree grade would not be required. However, the planning team finds that the reduced size tree grade would not be consistent with those being stored on adjacent blocks. Additionally, the larger size tree grade would create more permeable surface for capturing stormwater runoff from the pavements. As such, the planning team recommends the project to use the standard 4 by 8 tree grades. The overall building height is about 85 feet. There is no height restriction in the MX5 zone. The main garage facade will utilize perforated metal panels, which would create a light and open sense of the building. The facade design employs changes in panel color, sizing, and pattern arrangement to add visual interest and to break the long Jefferson Street facing facade. On the corner of 10th and 11th Street, there are two stair towers extending beyond the building massing to capture a view of the foothills and also provide the distinctive design to the highly visible street corners. The applicant is here tonight, and they will talk more of the architectural aspect of this project. With that, the planning team recommends approval of this application with finding facts and the recommended condition of approval, including the staff report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Questions at all from the commission at this point for staff?
Do they want a second access point, or is just one fine?
As of right now, the project only proposes one access, but I will let the applicant provide the answer to that.
Great. At this time, I'd invite the applicant forward. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Alexandra Monjar with Capital City Development Corporation, or CCDC, located at 121 North 9th Street. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project to you tonight, and thank you, Catherine and city staff who have assisted us with our application. As Boise's Urban Renewal Agency, CCDC invests in infrastructure to ignite economic growth, build attractive urban centers, and promote healthy community design. Public parking garages are part of that strategy, and we own and operate 6 garages under the Park Boy brand. We build public parking because it reduces the infrastructure costs associated with redevelopment, which supports businesses and incentivizes a higher quality of urban info. So we're investing in this project to support the objectives of the West Side District Plan, which are to create more walkable streets and encourage development of housing and mixed-use buildings on underutilized property. The project site is at or near the intersection of the 11th Street Bikeway and the best-in-class Valley Regional Transit State Street route. And we also think it's on the kind of emerging edge of downtown's urban footprint. So we saw an opportunity here to create more than just a garage. And before we started drawings, we began with establishing a vision and guiding principles for the project, because we intend to not only deliver public parking, but a great urban environment. Our vision is to create a welcoming, safe, and lasting community asset that reflects Boise's identity, catalyzes surrounding development, expands mobility options, and fosters connection for all who live, work, and visit downtown. This vision is informed by our guiding principles, as is our design, which are to catalyze urban development, create a welcoming community hub, provide a safe, functional, and accessible experience, deliver a lasting public investment, expand mobility options, cultivate Boise's aesthetic and urban environment, and advance environmental stewardship. This project also incorporates goals of the city's modern zoning code. We aim to support creating great neighborhoods by enhancing the West Side's unique character, to create predictable and sustainable development patterns by balancing user needs and supporting a comprehensive and safe mobility network for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians, and creating economic opportunities by building and disposing of commercial spaces where businesses in our community can set roots and grow, and creating a safe and healthy community through thoughtful design that incorporates significant pedestrian areas, highly visible glass stair enclosures, bike connections, and intuitive wayfinding. We are ready to comply with the recommended conditions of approval. We're actually asking the commission to consider revising 2 of those conditions, 1B concerning the paving patterns and 1C regarding the tree gates, as Catherine mentioned. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael McHugh from Pivot North to talk more about our design. And then at the end, Christopher Hawkins with the Land Group will provide our reasoning behind these requested modifications to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
If you would please state your name and address too.
Yes. Michael McHugh, 116 South 6th Street, Boise. Yeah, thanks for having me. Clicker. So over the last decade, there's been significant investment from public agencies and private development in the west end of downtown, generating a lot of energy and resulting in an interesting quality of public space, such as the 11th Street Bikeway, Cherie Buckner Webb Park, and the Sparrow and Jump. Situated along the 11th Street Bikeway, the CCDC garage project is perfectly positioned to leverage this momentum and further catalyze revitalization of this part of town. The site is the half block just north of Jefferson Street between 10th and 11th, with the Y facility currently under construction just to the north across the alley, a two-story brick office building across 10th Street, as well as a jewelry store catacorner, surface parking lot across Jefferson Street, the iconic Boise Plaza southwest of the site, and last but not least, the Lock, Stock, and Barrel restaurant building. The site plan here, the project is anchored by a public plaza space along the 11th Street frontage that connects with the building's breezeway, pulling the public experience through the building to prioritize the public experience. Sidewalks and frontages have been expanded along Jefferson and 10th Street, while dedicated bike facilities improve mobility along all street frontages. The alley to the north of the structure will have limited vehicular use and is to be developed to prioritize pedestrian connectivity with intentional paving patterns and playful lighting. Talking about community connections, this site is intended to be an additional public space along the 11th Street Bikeway, complementing Cherie Buckner Webb Park and other public amenities. As a public space, the project will be developed to provide inviting opportunities to gather and engage. And with novelty and delight, in keeping with the adjacent character and proposed uses, the site will be developed to elicit a sense of novelty, and interactive furnishings will inspire delight while providing function. Looking at the floor plan, the first thing one notices with the ground floor plan is that it isn't the typical maxed out building footprint, but gives breathing room and provides more space for the public realm. Notably, the plaza space along 11th Street, which plays off the condition being implemented with the Y Street frontage. It is more playful and creates a sense of place, part of our guiding principles. The Early Learning Center is set back with a buffer and outdoor play space defining the edge along a portion of Jefferson Street with active commercial spaces and our vertical circulation anchoring the corners. All of this helps to create a pedestrian permeable building. The primary material at the ground floor is brick and curtain wall glazing, creating a dynamic ribbon that undulates along the 3 street frontages. The primary material for the structure above are the terraced bone white perforated aluminum panels, which create a simple yet articulate veil around the efficient concrete parking structure. This veil is only broken by the 2 glass stair towers, which anchor the building at its prominent street corners. These next 2 slides are simply to show how the building sits comfortably within its context, while also being a very engaging, unique, and memorable building. This is the view looking up 11th Street, and this is the view looking east down Jefferson Street. I should also point out that this highlights a primary sustainable feature of the project, the solar array canopy, which caps the structure and will supplement the building's power needs. The view from Hyatt Place surface lot, which is just across Jefferson Street, highlighting the aluminum panel veil, which floats above the ground floor, as well as the stair towers that bring interest and physical movement to the ends of each of the structure. So these next couple of slides are really just to walk us around the street frontages. So this is the view across 11th Street, shows the only vehicle entry into the structure. As you move towards Jefferson Street, there's a high bay commercial space, we have about 20 foot clear, and the pedestrian garage access stair tower, which offers incredible views of downtown for orientation and the Capitol. Here's, we're looking west along Jefferson Street at the 10th Street corner. This shows how the ground floor brick ribbon curves in toward the garage elevator stair lobby, and how the entry is engaged with the entry of the commercial space, where there's also a small outdoor seating area adjacent to the building. Also, our design pushes the pedestrian zone out into the right of way where there were parking spaces to provide additional pedestrian gathering spaces, and we will be working with the city to provide an appropriate response to the seating in this area. This view is of the same location, essentially just on Jefferson Street, looking back towards the building, and showing how with the use of lighting, we can create an inviting atmosphere in that space. In this image, we wanted to illustrate, it was brought up from the city at our IDR meeting, the continuity of the bike lane, and that by removing the parking along Jefferson, we will not be disturbing or creating an awkward transition in regard to the bicycle traffic as it moves through east-west. This image shows our uniquely shaped freestanding commercial space that is really our homage to the Boise Plaza's glass box. This form fronts Jefferson Street, but also plays a part in the creation and visibility through to the breezeway. This image also illustrates how our parking structure above cantilevers over the right-of-way, reinforcing the floating nature of the floors above. This cantilever allowed for a more safe and functional parking garage. Here, we're looking at a view from 11th Street, looking across the plaza and into the breezeway, which is, we saw in the last slide, is activated by the freestanding commercial space, but also is where one would access Bike Boy, which is right underneath those lights in the breezeway. The plaza space is delineated from the public right-of-way with the use of a seat wall and landscaping. Commercial spaces with outdoor seating areas, as well as the stair tower, help activate the plaza space. This is a view across 11th Street showing that the cladding becomes a textural backdrop, which allows the stair tower as well as the activated pedestrian realm to be the main focus, with the breezeway inviting us to explore and walk through the project. We also see again the solar array canopy that highlights the project's commitment to environmental stewardship. Same image, but at night, represents a study in lighting, showing its potential for creating interest in how the cladding can be a canvas, and with color changes, as well as potential for projection mapping during special events. The possibilities are endless. The interior lighting is something we're still studying, but for the use of the garage inside. And this last shot is just one detailed view of the facade and our perforated aluminum panel system. We're still working to find the exact profile, but it's the basis of design is on a concealed fastener Morin panel system. And with that, I'll hand it over to Christopher to talk about the conditions.
Thank you. If you would say your name and address too, please.
Commissioners, thank you. I am Christopher Hawkins, landscape architect with the Land Group at 462 East Shore Drive in Eagle, Idaho. As noted earlier, we are asking the commission to consider a compromise or a removal of condition B with regard to the compliance with pavement patterns. We appreciate the city's desire for continuity with streetscape standards from a maintenance and implementation perspective. However, we ask that the commission consider that standard to be the minimum standard for improvements, and we hope to do better with this project. There are precedents for this approach to an elevated pavement treatment throughout Boise's urban core. Examples of this approach for sidewalk treatment include the Jewels on 3rd, the Hearth on 4th, and even here at City Hall, where the streetscape has been improved to a standard higher than that is noted in the Boise's downtown streetscape standards, thus enriching the public realm. As mentioned previously, Cherie Buckner Webb Park is a critical comparable for our project. At that facility, the public park experience extends into the right-of-way through the use of a unique paving pattern, similar to those suggested by our project. This merges park space with streetscape, thus creating a more vibrant public environment. We propose a similar approach for the intersection of 11 and Jefferson at a minimum. As shown in this diagram, one consideration for a change to the condition would be to limit the use of a decorative paving pattern to the lower southwest corner of the project site at the intersection of 11th and Jefferson. In doing this, we will replicate the success of the precedent examples with just a simple change in colored concrete texture, and scoring patterns. As shown, this reduction would be 60% from what was presented in the initial design review application. However, if the commission is agreeable to removing that condition entirely, it would provide us more flexibility moving forward and right-sizing the approach for pavement treatment along the Jefferson frontage and the corner of 11th Street. As with condition B, we are asking the commission to reconsider condition C, which relates to the tree size, and request again a compromise solution. We understand the justification for specifying the larger 4x8 tree grate and the city's standards was adopted by the city to provide better soil volumes and irrigation to promote street tree health. We heard again tonight also that there's some consideration for its use for stormwater treatment, and we'll address that as well moving forward. However, the larger tree grate size no longer serves the purpose when the street trees are installed with the city's approved suspended pavement system. For that reason, we request the commission consider allowing the use of 4x4 tree grates along the Jefferson Street frontage only for this project, as that frontage is not contiguous with other block faces. We are agreeable to removing the 4x4 grates on the 10th Street frontage because there are already proposed 4x8 tree grates to the north on the YMCA site. So really what we're looking for here is just an exception for that Jefferson Street frontage. As seen in the precedent examples provided in this image, the suspended pavement system has been effectively used with smaller tree grates locally, nationally, and internationally for decades. It can be successfully implemented on Jefferson Street, despite the conditions mentioned by staff. The suspended pavement system provides the necessary soil volumes, oxygen exchange, and irrigation beneath the pavement surface rather than at the tree grate opening, encouraging tree root growth away from the grate. With these improved growing conditions, healthy street trees develop regardless of tree grate size. Additionally, the current 4x8 tree standard already places the limiting 4-foot dimension on the trees as they grow. Limiting the tree grate to 4 feet in the opposite direction will not impact tree health or pavement performance. As for the comment about stormwater treatment, I don't agree that it would significantly increase the amount of capture for runoff along this frontage, especially since the suspended pavement system is designed to capture most of the stormwater in a gutter that then directs it to subsurface perforated pipes that distribute it through the system. So we're not seeing significant capture that occurs right at the opening for the tree grate. And then finally, as mentioned, the hope for this Jefferson Street frontage is to create an active public space supportive of adjacent retail uses. Larger tree grates, especially over time, can create barriers to accessibility through material change and the introduction of possible trip hazards. By reducing the tree grate size, we expand the adjacent usable space for bike racks, tables, lighting, art, and the proposed loading zones along the Jefferson Street frontage. By implementing a strategy that uses smaller tree grates along the Jefferson Street frontage, we can increase the functional capacity of the streetscape as a critical component of Boise's urban experience while improving the user experience as well. Please consider our request for the use of 4x4 tree grates along the Jefferson Street frontage. Thank you for your consideration. We will stand for any questions when appropriate.
Thanks. Any questions for that, Brent?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Simple.
I'm not entirely sure which of the three of you would answer this, but the alley paving that you have shown in there with the same kind of scoring patterns and stuff, is that something that ACHD has reviewed and approved or accepted as an alternative for that?
We have not specifically discussed this project with ACHD, but it's similar to strategies that we have used with CCDC on other projects where we looked at other paving materials that add interest. Here, where we are using more of just a colored and textured concrete, it often has less resistance with that agency because they've expressed concerns previously about sort of paver settling and things of that nature. Pavers also weren't considered for this project, though they do provide a richness to the public realm because there's a lot of utilities that exist within that specific alley that didn't allow us to use permeable pavers. So without that functionality, we didn't think that it was probably appropriate for this location.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Got a question maybe for Michael and on the veil piece. The perforation pattern looks like it varies across the front and gauge thickness of that. Is that still under design or is there more information you can kind of provide on that?
Yeah, so actually, could you repeat the
perforation pattern on it? So it kind of looks like it's got a striation or a different.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Has that been, it's kind of subtle, so I don't know that it's really easy to see. Maybe you can describe a little bit more about maybe size of the perforations and
Yeah, so it being we're wanting it to be an open garage, right? So not have to mechanically ventilate this. So we need to meet a certain requirement for that. So at a minimum, I think our panels, as you can see in this, and like you said, you can see kind of striping in that. You can also see that it terraces up. So it's additionally kind of starts flush at the stair tower along 10th Street. Or at 10th Street. As it moves towards 11th Street, it starts to splay off. So each one of those terraces extends out like an extra foot as you go up. The perforations are going to be a minimum of about a 30% to 33% open. And I think we're going to vary that where you see the striations. It may be more or less. So we'll get some variation. And also we're going to play with the tone, or I should say the sheen of the actual metal panel, so that gives variation as well. Again, we don't want to do too much to like overwhelm, but each terrace as well, there's a main body panel that we're going to be using that will have a certain relief to it, and that will change at each terrace as you move up the building. But then I'm just going to call it a sawtooth pattern. And we have some examples material. Oh, here we go. Of what we're looking at in regards to the profiles of the unique ones. And then there's going to be ones that are essentially like a flat metal panel, if you will, you'll still see the seam. There'll be, let's say like a 2-inch gap on the bottom, 4-inch gap at the second level, and then a 6-inch gap at the top level interspersed with these, which will be consistent above. The one thing we are looking at with this, we want it to be clean from the inside as well. So panels, one being perforated, and two, the profile makeup, they have a certain span allowability or ability. And we're wanting to maximize that so we can minimize the amount of horizontals, one from a safety standpoint, and two from a visual standpoint. So we're trying to get something that can span 4.5 to 5 feet, even more, so that we have less of that going up, if that makes sense.
the horizontal support system.
Horizontal supports.
Okay.
So again, from the inside, let's say we've got an 11-foot floor to floor, that you're only seeing maybe 1 or 2 supports max, and mainly getting a view out from that.
I got a follow-up question. If you can go to the night view one, or I guess dusk one, I guess that has a really nice effect. I guess the concerns would be how that is implemented, and so that you don't actually see the fixture itself as almost like a band of neon necessarily, and just kind of have the indirect. Didn't know if you had any detail or thought on that.
We haven't gotten to that detail yet, but I think that is what helps with the terracing as it moves out, where we can place the fixture and the low profiles. This is the science that I don't fully know of how they can work with bending the light so that it wall washes down and you're not looking up into it. But that would be the plan for those horizontals that go through. And again, as I stated on the interior, we're just going to be looking primarily safety and all the factors, but still with a solid fixture that works well.
Okay. Final question from my side is mechanical equipment, location and screening. Is that
So
identified in-
our big push right now, and we're working with Cateruma on this, is again, we have a lot of volume. So one, we're cantilevering over the right of way on Jefferson Street. So at a minimum, we have to be 17 foot clear. So we're already high up, and then our beam depth, this is probably nuanced more than you want to know, but the main goal is to get everything to come off the back in the alley and not take stuff up through the roof and have to screen stuff up there. I mean, that would just create major complications. So we're trying to keep everything in that. And we have mezzanine space in the back that we can keep open and for those elements.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
I assume that is that 17-foot clear off the ground up to the second floor. So that is enough height for your transformer that I imagine will be set within the footprint.
So that's even more. So our 17-foot clears to the underside of beam to the floor plate is actually 20 foot, I think. So we're giving about 3 foot for structure. So again, we actually have more space in between those beams. But as you can see from the, let's go back to the main, is that the pointer? Yeah. Oh, well, you can't see me pointing at that. Anyway, you can see it kind of elevates up towards 10th Street. So on that side, we have that floor plate, I want to say, is up at 26 feet or 23 feet, something like that.
So does this ramp on both sides?
There is ramps on both Jefferson and the alley. So it's kind of a scissor. Mm-hmm. And so it comes up. So on that, where the transformer would be, we have ample space above it. Yes.
Other questions for that thing?
Oh,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, could you just get a little bit more into the kind of the conceptual backing on the awning? Well, not the awnings, but the solar array up there, and just kind of the way that I mean, I want to be clear. This is the most beautiful parking garage I've ever seen designed. I appreciate that, and you've got a lot of great concept at play here. I just want to know kind of more what the interplay of that element with the other elements is envisioned as. My own perspective, it just seems like it doesn't quite make sense why it stands off of the stair tower on that western element when it kind of occupies the same footprint as the veil below it. Just an observation.
Yeah, part of it, again, I'm probably not going to be able to go into the complete uniqueness of the size of solar panels per Idaho Power and what the benefit of how much you need. So we were given essentially a square footage, and I was working to where to place that. And again, the energy, not to take away from Pent, but obviously the bikeway along 11th is more prominent. And so we were using it as a feature to highlight that piece. So really kind of bringing it out so that you could see it and recognize it and understand it from like down at street level, still see something and understand that, oh, what's that? And you maybe even also use it as an educational piece. So it is, we are trying to make it a visual element in that nature.
Other questions? Great. Thank you very much. Is there any members of the public wishing to testify here in person? Seeing none. Any online, Josh? Okay. Anything else? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of this, bring back to the committee or commission for discussion and a motion. Yes, I can go first. Yeah, a nice job here too. I think the veil is a very unique, and I think it could be a really dramatic. Implementing it may be a challenge, and like I say, something that doesn't highlight all of the supports on the back is I think might be still a bit of a challenge, but I really applaud the work and on the elevations and the public space in the ground area. I don't see a problem. I'd probably ask you, Ben, if there's any thoughts on the 4x8 tree grates being changed out along Jefferson Street. That seems to work well with the street patterning that they're pulling through into the right of way. So overall, I think is a really attractive design, and appreciate the work and the graphics and stuff that you presented tonight.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's a great looking building. I work kind of right around the corner from here, so yeah, watching the construction on the Y go up, and then this will be really cool when I walk downtown for meetings. So, but I don't think that a 4x8 is really necessary there. Those suspended pavement systems provide, yeah, as Christopher mentioned, all of the stormwater treatment that you need along there. It looks like there's some additional surface planter areas that are independent of where those tree grates would be, and it's a fully open planter bed, which will take in any rain that falls directly on it. I mean, this is a much more involved streetscape. I mean, from this rendering, I'm assuming you took the plan for along the Y there on 11th. They've got, looks like 3, maybe 4 street trees there, but this thing is incorporating a lot more planter space. I think it's super unique to go under the building into those spaces. I mean, getting into shade in Boise and downtown can be challenging sometimes. So I think that that's helping. You know, but regardless, I don't see the need to put 4x8s on Jefferson. I think it, if anything, it would compromise a little bit of the usable space there. Having been by tree grates when they fail, having installed tree grates as a contractor, they're not fun. The 4x8s are a pain. So I would be fine changing that condition. I also think that condition B, the paving, I would rather see that carry out into the public right of way. I go by all of the examples that you listed, and most of the time I think to myself, I would rather see paving treatments like that in downtown. It really like highlights the project. And I think it's really appropriate here. I don't think that we should restrict the design to a certain percentage or a certain area. I think you've demonstrated that you can put together a design that is super dynamic and I think is attractive for this area. And I wouldn't want to say build 4x8 or 4x4 concrete panels adjacent to this really cool space. It just feels like it would segment it up too much a little bit. So
thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr.
Can we encourage the Y to adopt a similar pattern in their
That's why I asked about the alley, because I thought if the alley was part of that Y, then, you know, and if that was approved, then, I mean, you could do every street frontage with that as far as I'm concerned.
If there are any other comments, maybe want to take a stab at a motion?
I kind of just continuing that conversation. I guess I do look at, there was an alternative scoring plan that was submitted for this hearing. And I think you brought up a good point that there is a continuation of those tree grades along other streets. And I think there's a continuation of that scoring pattern. I do wonder, I mean, could we get your thoughts? I do wonder if there's kind of like a happy medium. You know, I look at the way that the facade has these points of entry where I think you could have points of emphasis, you know, as you're walking along. I guess what I'm saying is I think there's a way you could have both potentially. I think there's an opportunity for continuity. I think there's also an opportunity to create points of interest, you know, along the street frontage. And I don't necessarily agree. I don't think it needs to be necessarily tied to a certain percentage. Going back to the, you know, paint by numbers, you know, I think it could be approach of like, hey, these are, you know, looking at rendering because these are locations where we could place tree grates for continuity, and then looking for opportunities. I do agree. I think the scoring pattern is always nice when you're walking through downtown and you experience something unique that is not consistent throughout the rest of downtown. So I do wonder like how we approach that. I mean, is it something that the design team would just if we remove this condition of approval, would they have the opportunity to amend that? And is there any other type of, is it basically up to them to propose a solution?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of components on this design that would probably be worth revisiting within a work session. And so maybe, I don't know that we need to propose multiple iterations on a paving plan or anything like that, but I would encourage the applicant to take those words to heart, coming back for a work session. I don't see maybe like a numerical requirement or anything like that, but I understand kind of both perspectives. The continuity gives the city a certain degree of unified character, whereas the dynamic and unique scoring pattern allows a certain location to have that character to itself. So, I mean, I come down on both sides of the fence, but I think it'd be worth exploring a little bit further as well. I just want to make sure that the applicant knows that I think this is, as I stated, one of the best looking parking garages that we've ever seen. I appreciate the materiality at the ground plane, particularly the care taken on the underside of the cantilever itself. I think that the biophilia of the wood and it's just not fair that anyone that's going to come bring a parking garage by us in the future is going to have this in the rearview mirror. One thing, and this is purely personal, but I think that the more interesting facade on that veil is on the Jefferson Street side, where you've got a little bit of diagonal movement in there as well. And I would love to see a little bit more of that kind of subtle diagonal dynamic nature in the other veil facades, but I think that's really a matter of personal taste. I think it'd just be interesting. I think this is probably something that the details matter. So, understanding more about that, the actual screen system and how that comes together, and it'd be good to see a detail on the lighting and probably, I think that's probably it.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you too. I mean, I think the storefront patterning too with the glass, I think it looks great, but I think there's probably more detail to be added. We've got some really thin looking roofs, of the
I believe it was called out as CLT, correct? The roof structures or the within the towers.
Yeah, CLT. Yeah. So I think you're right we'd just like to give maybe one more look at a work session at an appropriate level of detail when those things can be figured out, just so that we can feel confident that the vision can be achieved through construction. But I think like all, I really applaud the effort at this point and the creativity with this particular project.
Yeah, I think that, Mr. Chair, I think that a work session also gives the design team the opportunity to explore where those score patterns go and where that different patterning is. I think I agree with all the comments that there are some pretty obvious points where you really enhance that, and maybe it can move in and out there where you're not at a point of interest or an entry space, something that, for lack of a better term, creates an eddy, like within a river system that slows people down, lets them, take a break from a lot of visual. But yeah, I mean, I think a work session is totally appropriate.
Well, anybody want to take a stab at a motion? Then plenty of support, and I think everybody's in agreement that a work session is warranted.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Could we see the proposed motion one more time? Although if memory serves, I think it was pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are two items, right? Number 1B was the paving into the right of way patterning, right? And the other one was maybe a modification on 1C on the Jefferson Street only for the 4x4s, or at least bring that back into a work session is what we're discussing. But
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve DRH 25-00227 according to the findings of fact, recommended, wow. You can tell my bedtime is 8 o'clock. Recommended conditions of approval, including the project report, striking condition 1B with a discretionary allowance to the applicant as to be resolved in a work session, which would be condition H. That we would see this project at a work session, not at a specific completion of design development, but when the applicant feels they have adequate detailing and materiality questions answered for presentation. And also striking condition 1C with the allowance of 4x4 street grid or street tree grates in the locations requested.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just to reconfirm that I think that what the applicant presented was 4x4 tree grates along Jefferson Street with, and then the suspended pavement systems, but the 4x8s along 10th and 11th.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, second.
No other discussion? Christina, will you please call the roll?
Simple.
Aye.
Marsh.
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
Gesrick.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.